I'm here with AJ Wilcox, and we're talking about LinkedIn ads and LinkedIn generally today. So AJ, will you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got started with LinkedIn?
When I very first started in my digital marketing journey, I didn't even know that LinkedIn ads existed. I started out in search engine optimization and in Google ads and a little bit of website building. Even as a student at BYU, it was during my senior year, I had an internship doing SEO. And, about 5 or 6 years into my career, I got hired at a local company called Domo.com. It was before their IPO. I was the first digital marketing hire. And I laid out my strategy to my new boss, the CMO, everything that I wanted to do. I remember her saying, all that sounds great. Go ahead and execute it. But just so you know, we started a pilot with LinkedIn ads about 2 weeks ago. See what you can do. And I didn't want to look stupid to my new boss. So I dove in and pretty much applied the same kind of strategies that I was used to with Google ads, even though they're very different platforms. And within about 2 weeks, the sales team came up to me and said, AJ, we don't know what you're doing over here, but we're fighting over your leads. Keep it up. I looked into it. All of the leads that they were talking about were all from LinkedIn ads. So I ended up growing that account over the next 2.5 years to become LinkedIn's largest spending account worldwide. And eventually after that went, okay, there've got to be more companies than just this one that LinkedIn ads would work well for. So it was just about a year ago that my anniversary is coming up here, it's just about 10 years ago. My anniversary is coming up here in the next 2 weeks. I left and I went and started an agency that was 100% focused on LinkedIn.
What's special about LinkedIn? I know a lot of people just default to Google ads or maybe Facebook. Why would people look to LinkedIn ads instead?
LinkedIn ads are, like, if you're looking at the platform, they're not all that special. It's missing a lot of the features that you might find in Meta or Google. But what LinkedIn does really well, it's why we pay a premium to advertise there and put up with some other issues, is LinkedIn has a monopoly on our business data, especially in business-to-business marketing, where our goal is to get in front of very specific decision makers. On Google, you can bid on the keywords that they would search for, but then you're going to get leads from people in the mailroom all the way to the CEO and everything in between, and you just have no idea who that person is. But on LinkedIn, I can say you have to be the director of IT or above in this industry at a company with at least this size. And so every lead that is generated is of really high value, whereas the other networks, you don't have that kind of level of control over the quality of the leads.
Okay, so help me out. But for someone who's new to LinkedIn advertising, where do the ads appear? If you target someone, how do they see that, and how do you get them into your lead funnel?
Yeah, the easiest way is to have your ads show up in the newsfeed. LinkedIn calls this sponsored content, but there's 8 different ad formats that all show up there. The simplest one is called a single image ad, where you have some text, a big image, and a little bit more text. Mm-hmm. The newsfeed, it's the default experience for both desktop and mobile. So that's where most people are going to see your ads. But you can support things like, if you want to run video ads, documents, if you want to have native forms pop up that are pre-filled, making it really easy for people to convert, those are all available there. There's also a set of ad formats that show up in the messaging box. So when you go into your messages, you can have a message from an individual or a brand automatically sent. Then there are a couple that show up only on desktop over in the right rail. So if you're surfing around on desktop, you might see text ads and what they call dynamic ads there in the right rail.
Okay. All right. And so I know it's going to vary based on keyword and who you're targeting and everything, but what would be a typical cost per click for someone advertising on LinkedIn?
Yeah, in North America, in the English language, that's where LinkedIn was born. That's where the competition is the highest. So we see an average of about $10 to $16 per click if you're targeting North America English language. If you're targeting elsewhere in the world, you might pay like $6 to $8 per click in Eastern Europe. In South America or Africa, you might pay $2 per click. So it depends quite a bit on competition.
Okay, and you want to pay that because it's very targeted and you're selling some product that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So good. So you launched your own agency, B2Linked, and so early had to be on the early end of LinkedIn advertising agencies for sure. And then how did you start acquiring clients? Who did you go to first?
Yeah, the biggest thing is when I started the company, I sat down with my laptop and I was like, okay, I'm ready to work. What do I need to do? I'm a really good marketer, but I suck at sales. And I'm not a finance guy. I'm not an operations guy. So my very first thing was well, I need clients, so I have to go sell. And I kind of figured out the sales angle of like, how do I approach people without feeling like I'm a used car dealer and feeling snaky. Yeah, that was my first launch. Is like, okay, I don't want to be that. I don't want to do sales. Instead, I'm going to go the inbound route. And so I started creating as much content as I could. Anytime that someone was already talking about LinkedIn ads, I would say, hey, can I be a guest on your podcast or a webinar or write a blog post as a guest and try to work those kinds of angles. I also love attending digital marketing conferences. And so I started pitching to speak at those. And sure enough, when you speak at enough of these events, enough of the attendees are saying like, hey, I can use some help implementing.
Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. Well, I've definitely seen you around. I thought it would be so great to have you on because for BYU students or any students who are thinking about being entrepreneurs, they've got to get on LinkedIn because that's just where the business people are, right? Yesterday I was talking to one of my students. I said, will you post a poll on such and such on LinkedIn? And he said, okay, well, I have like 5 LinkedIn contacts. And so if you're just starting out as a student, what should you do? How do you build up your network and make it valuable for you?
Yeah, I think the first thing you do is reach out to the people that you already know, people that in real life, they know you. And so when they see an invite come saying, I want to connect with you on LinkedIn, these are all the people that don't even have to question. They're going to accept it. Grow your network with the people who are your network at school, your family, cousins, whatever. As soon as you get into a job, any specific job, like one of the very first things I would do is say, okay, who in the company can I start growing my network with and growing that way? So that's kind of number one. It's the easiest way. Number two is then starting to say, okay, who do I want in my network? Who can I start inviting and coming up with good reasons for them to want to accept my request? Or can I start creating content that attracts people and now I'm giving them a reason to want to follow me? I think those are all great places to start.
Yeah, and if people reach out to you, especially a college student or something, you're going to accept that. You're going to connect with them typically, right? When you start inviting people, what is the best practice? Because early on in LinkedIn, I know they said never connect with someone you don't know in the real world, but now they've moved way far away from that. What is the best practice now?
There's not really a best practice. I'm really conservative. Like you only get 30,000 people that you could be connected to, but you could have infinite followers. And I didn't know early on that I was going to have a lot of followers. I just knew that I didn't want my network clouded with a bunch of people that I didn't know who they were. So I've been really conservative and tight about like, I'll only accept the connection request if someone tells me why it is they want to connect, and it's because they want to sell me something. But there are quite a few people who say like, my network is only as powerful as I have people I'm connected to. So I'm gonna be okay with it, accepting requests from other people that I might not know. If you do that though, it's not a problem. But if you do that, be prepared. You're probably going to get a lot of sales pitches and a lot of favors asked of you, and you may just have to remove people if they rub you the wrong way.
And at some point, you switch from an account where you're just connecting to people to an account where you can have followers. When's the right time to do that?
I would say after your 5,000-ish connections is probably a good time to say, okay, I want to turn on the follower button instead. It really can happen at any time, but people who want to connect with you, they're already savvy on LinkedIn, they're going to connect to you anyway. Those who are less savvy, if the button says follow rather than connect, I've had quite a few people tell me like, oh yeah, I sent you a connection request, and I look and it's not there, and they must have just hit the follow button. Okay. So I would say for most people, having the connect button, at least for quite a while, is there, is probably the best way to go.
Okay, and you can control that in the settings, right?
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned creating content as a way to connect. What are kind of the types of content people like most on LinkedIn? What works?
I think video is by far and if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, no, video on LinkedIn ads or video on LinkedIn period isn't great. But user behavior has shifted to where now there's a lot of people who are active on LinkedIn every day, and they are there and happy to consume content. So some of the very best video content that I've seen perform is just like you holding your phone, a few inches from your face, and just a quick 15, 30-second, here's a quick tip, here's a trick, here's an update to your industry that you might be interested in. anything that provides value and insight.
Yeah. And it feels like we're in the early end of video content on LinkedIn, so probably a good time to get in on that. I do worry about hitting people with too much content. Like, how concerned should you be about that?
Most people on LinkedIn aren't there all the time. And so even if you created, a one piece of content, a video per day, I don't think you're going to find that people are annoyed. So there's really no limit to how much and how often you can create. But usually the kickback that I get from people is like, oh, that's a lot of work and I don't have time for that. And so I'd say if you can post once a week even, that's a good cadence to just make sure that anytime one of my followers or my connections comes online, I've got something that is possible for them to see.
And does your agency create content for people, or do you kind of coach them? Here's what you should be creating. How do you interact on that?
Yeah, we do a lot of coaching. We found we definitely have services where we can help them create content, but we find that they are the ones who understand their customer better, and they understand their product much better than we could without being subject matter experts. So usually I lean on them for topics and for content, and then I can give advice on, okay, here's how to help this play well with your LinkedIn audience. But most of the time I say, you as the subject matter expert, you come up with what your audience wants.
Okay. So if a new entrepreneur, they're starting up a company and they go through your type of service to set up a campaign, what are all the things they should be thinking about? What are the steps? How does a full-blown campaign work?
So the acronym that I would say keep in mind is bring your ammo, and that's AMO. It's know who your audience is that you want to target, because that's what we set up as we build a campaign on LinkedIn, is tell it who to target. Your M is message. This is what you're actually going to say to your prospect. And then O is your offer, what you're offering them in exchange for their attention. Mm-hmm. So just starting out, you might say, this is a cold audience who's never heard of me before. I'm going to give them as much value as I possibly can without asking anything of them. And then you can use retargeting to say, all right, once they've engaged with and consumed that, the next time they come back, I want to show them something that's a little bit deeper. I really like to go for a 3-stage funnel, but you don't have to right at first. You could start with here's something of a lot of value, and then I'm going to follow up with, hey, does it make sense to have a call or actually discover or explore this together?
Okay. And so will LinkedIn do that? It'll say first contact, first time this person sees you, they see X, second time Y, third time Z.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a manual setup in creating those retargeting audiences. But what you can do is set up one campaign. Let's say it's a single image ad campaign. So you build an image in Canva, write a little bit of copy in Word or whatever, post this ad. Then you can create a retargeting audience inside of LinkedIn that says, anyone who engages in any way with this ad, create this audience. And then you create another campaign, could also be single image, saying just target the people who are in that retargeting audience. And now you have 2 stages.
Got it. Okay, great. What if so in tech transfer often, we're trying to get technologies out that are raw, we're talking to entrepreneurs, but we might not know exactly who. If you don't know exactly who your audience is, are there any experiments you can run, or how do you figure that out?
Yeah. I mean, if you're sharing things organically, you'll notice the kinds of people who engage and are interested. Just take note of those things and be like, oh, what I'm looking for is I want to see job titles. What are the job titles who tend to be interested in? I also want to see what size of company do they represent and in what industries. So I spend a good deal of time every week analyzing people's profiles, just trying to understand who is it who is liking this. And something else you could do, you talked about running a poll. Polls are great. You could just say hey, what do you think of this? And then see who it is who's answering the polls. You could also offer something for free. Hey, I just released this research paper. Anyone who comments below, I'll send it to you. And then you get a lot of people, by commenting, you're starting a bunch of conversations behind the scenes. And that's a great way to start lots of conversations and see who these people are who are saying, ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I've seen people do that. One thing I know about polls that's interesting is if you put up a poll, you can click and you can see what individual people answered, right? Sure. That's crazy. It's surprising they do that, but it's super insightful.
Yeah, totally.
What are some other secrets or clever things that you've seen people do that we might not be aware of?
I don't know about clever. I think anytime that you have creative that is funny, humor just, it pushes on our funny bones and our memory in ways that you just, nothing else does. So if you can think of a way to be unique and funny and playful, those things are really going to be helpful to you. And there are some examples, especially in video. If you create a funny ad, those play really well. You get much lower costs for running that kind of ad than you ever would something that's boring.
Yeah, there's a guy on there you've probably seen who does like funny marketing department videos, and he's hilarious and has huge followership, I think. So
totally.
Here's one concern I have with any social media network is you worry about arbitrary enforcement. Like if you invest in a platform, what happens if they shut down your account? And actually, we had a BOE Tech Transfer LinkedIn account, and it was set up like 14 years ago from someone who hasn't worked here forever and must have been set up wrong. And they suddenly last spring just shut it down. And so we had almost 7,000 followers. And I love LinkedIn. My individual account's just fine. But it got shut down. We went through the appeals process. There was really nothing to do about it. Is it risky to rely on one social media platform for your advertising?
If it's Meta, I would say yes. I hear about people's Meta accounts getting shut down every single day with no warning. LinkedIn's not quite so crazy. Like accounts can go down if a profile gets deactivated, but then you can always just remove that person from the account and then you're back up and going. Meta is crazy, like destroying businesses. Robotically, kind of crazy. But yeah, it is like putting all of your eggs in any one basket is always risky. But I know that as long as you're trying to abide by LinkedIn's terms of service, there's going to be a second chance. The only time that they don't give you a second chance is if there's some like specific thing that has gone against what they like. They don't like if you scrape their data, and they don't like if you automate anything that you do on LinkedIn. They want it to be all like a human doing it. And they want to make sure that your account is only logged into by one person. And as long as you stick within those boundaries, like something goes down, you can always contact support and hopefully get access to it again.
Yeah, I think it was number 3. I think it was having multiple people post on the office's account. I don't know, but
could.
But anyway, I like using my individual account, so no problem there. So what are some other trends you see emerging with LinkedIn? How has advertising changed during the decade you've been doing it, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, early on, we used to be able to show ads to cold audiences and say, hey, we offer this product or service. Get in contact, fill out a lead form, and talk to sales. And then after 3 or 4 years, we realized it's like pushing a boulder up a hill. It was getting really hard to get actual conversions. They were getting really expensive, and it wasn't working very well. So we realized, we probably need to give them something of value first to get their attention. So we went really heavy on gated content for a while. So before we ever ask you to hop on a call with our sales rep, we're going to say, here's this research report. Here's a free guide or ebook or something that we've worked really hard on. We feel like is really valuable. Give us your email address in exchange for that. Then the sales team would follow up with people who downloaded that content and try to set up meetings. Then I would say in the last 3 or 4 years, we found that was like pushing a boulder up a hill. People would say, yeah, I'm willing to give you my email address to download this content. But just because I'm downloading content doesn't mean I'm ready to talk to your sales department. In B2B, I think the stat is we do something like 80% of our research before ever contacting the company. So you have all of these people who are doing their first 80% of research. They don't want to be bothered. And so now we do that strategy like I talked about with, all right, let's give as much value as we can possibly give without asking for anything. Then we'll retarget you with more and more engaging things like webinars, like guides, ebooks, that kind of thing. And only then, once you've been through both of those steps, that's when we start saying, hey, you look like you're probably interested. You ought to talk to someone.
Yeah, that's terrific. And do you perceive that there are certain products and services that do best on LinkedIn? Are there preferable categories, or are people selling everything?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on budget. And what I mean by that is, like, we have a client who's going after niche construction companies. So if you're putting in flooring, or if you are, building countertops, like they want to target you. You can imagine those kind of people, they don't spend all day on LinkedIn, In fact,
Right.
they probably don't check in all too often at all. And so to reach an audience like that, you don't need very much money, like $1,000 or $2,000 a month. You could probably reach every one of those kind of people there are. Versus if you want to get in front of, let's say, HR people, recruiters, they spend all day on LinkedIn. They love the platform. They live on it. To really have an impact with an audience like that, you might have a budget of $600K to $1 million a month, and it's still not fully hit every single person in that audience. It's marketing is more effective when you reach someone more often. So it's nice to go after those kinds of professionals who tend to be on LinkedIn. That's your HR, your sales, your marketing. But if you go outside of that, it's not a problem. You may just not be able to spend a huge budget doing.
Okay. Are there any major success stories that you're free to share with us? What's gone really well?
Yeah, we just had one. So this is interesting. It's a local company to Utah, in like the healthcare insurance space. And what's been interesting, because they sell insurance to partners, one deal is worth lots and lots of money to them. I mean, we're talking at least 7 figures here. So in the advertising that we've been doing for the last several years, we generally get about 2 leads per quarter. And they are thrilled to get those 2 leads per quarter, because it's like, if one of them closes, millions and millions in profit. And it was really funny. LinkedIn came out with a new ad format called Thought Leader ads last year. And the gist is all the other ads come from your company, but Thought Leader ads are where you can promote an individual's post. So now instead of people seeing, oh, here's a company I've never seen before, now they're saying, oh, here's a face I've never seen before. And they give it more, they engage more, they give it more time looking at it. And so these ads performed really, really well. Just last quarter, we saw the steady, like 2 leads per quarter. This last quarter, they had 18.
Oh, wow.
And blew it up. We looked at the beginning of the quarter, the only change that we had, we launched Thought Leader ads.
Okay.
We could tell people love to interact with people, not necessarily companies.
Okay. Great. That's super interesting. And is that available to everyone, or are there some things that you can only do if you have a premium account or some special service?
Yeah, actually, you can do all of this stuff from the free account. I tell people, don't worry about buying a premium account unless you're using it a lot and you get to a paywall. Sometimes you'll be like, you're searching because you're doing research, and you hit a paywall that says, you've done too much searching. You need to have a premium account if you want to do more. Okay. Right. Then you can subscribe there. But I say do as much as you can for free without having to pay.
Okay. And like I think you said, like LinkedIn really is the place for business to business sales for sure, for contacting other professionals. There's some other places. There's like, Angel List, some other things out there. Are there any other good social networks to be on that you can think of?
I used to say Twitter, X. I used to spend a lot of time there, but I don't get as much value out of the platform anymore. I pretty much live on LinkedIn, and no matter what network you choose, you can build a whole network around you and find the information you're looking for. TikTok, like, I know we're all kind of worried about what happens if legislation happens and TikTok goes away, but you could build an entire network around you of just people on TikTok that you live and breathe. So I would say just pick one network that makes the most sense and invest your time and efforts there. As you build a team, as you have more success and more time, sure, you can always branch out, but I find that I reach burnout pretty quick if I try to work on more than one network at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, great. Well, AJ, this has been really interesting. The LinkedIn feels like it's still a great investment. It's not going anywhere. There's no other new LinkedIn on the horizon that I can see. If people want to learn more from you or get in contact with B2Linked, how do they do that?
Yeah, just come follow me or reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's by far the easiest. Just type AJ Wilcox. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. If you send me a connection request and just customize it and say, you heard me on the Tech Transfer podcast, like, I'd love to accept and be a resource to you. If you're interested in our website, you can go to B2Linked.com. I host a weekly podcast that goes really deep into every area, every unexplored crevice of LinkedIn ads. So if you're a podcast listener and that sounds interesting, the LinkedIn Ads Show.
Perfect. All right. Well, AJ, thanks for being with us and sharing all this information. Great to know about.
Thanks so much, Dave. Have me back anytime.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks.